Vancouver rentals just entered a different era. Vacancy is at a 1988 high. Rents have been sliding for over a year, and the old tenant lineup is not guaranteed anymore. If you own a home with a suite, a laneway, or any rental income tied to your mortgage, you need to understand what's changing right now. Because for decades in Vancouver, renting was very easy. You listed the unit, your phone blew up, you had multiple applicants within days, deposits were ready, people had strong credit, there was no negotiation, and being a landlord was extremely safe. Nowadays, that era is over. Not because Vancouver is crashing, not because people suddenly don't want to live here, but because the structure of the rental market has shifted. And when the structure changes, the behavior follows. So let's break this down clearly, calmly, and honestly, because most homeowners are still operating with old assumptions in a new market. For most of modern Vancouver history, the rental market was this. Demand was constant, supply was tight, and population growth did the heavy lifting. Even if rents paused for a bit, vacancy stayed low. And even if the economy slowed, people still needed places to live. That's why basement suites became the normal here. That's why laneway homes exploded. That's why buyers started saying things like, the suite pays the mortgage. And for a long time, that statement was mostly true, but today, the math is completely different. According to the CMHC, Vancouver's purpose-built rental vacancy rate is now at the highest level since 1988. Not 2020. That's not a talking point, that is a structural signal. At the same time, asking rents have been trending down for over a year. Nationally, rents were lower year over year, and Vancouver has seen one of the sharpest declines among major cities in Canada. That alone should make you pause because Vancouver almost never leads rent declines. It usually resists them. So when Vancouver softens, it matters. Now let's talk about why this is happening, because this is not one thing. It's multiple forces hitting at the same time. First, demand has softened. For the first time in modern Canadian history, population actually declined in late 2025. And this is critical. It's not that the population dipped, it's who left. A large portion of the decline came from non-permanent residents, temporary workers, and international students. The exact demographic that fits basement suites, laneways, condos, and room rentals. These are not long-term homeowners. For the most part, these are all renters. So when that group shrinks, rental demand shrinks fast. This is not theoretical, this is mechanical. Fewer renters equals more competition among landlords. Secondly, supply has surged. This is the part most people underestimate. Developers didn't stop building rentals. They actually accelerated. We are seeing record levels of purpose-built rental completions across Metro Vancouver. Entire buildings with hundreds of units at a time leasing simultaneously. And when large buildings lease up, they don't wait patiently. They compete. Free months, move-in bonuses, gift cards, parking deals, amenity access, and CMHC has explicitly said that incentives are becoming more common as landlords compete harder. That is a massive shift because now a basement suite isn't just competing with another basement suite. It's competing with a brand new building with a gym, with an elevator, soundproofing, and leasing incentives. So even if your unit is cheaper, the comparison is still happening in the tenant's head. Thirdly, short-term rentals were pushed into the long-term market. With BC's short-term rental rules and enforcement tightening, many units that used to live outside the long-term rental pool were forced back into the market. That means more supply chasing the same or smaller tenant base. So now let's combine all three of these: softer demand, more supply, and tenants with more options. That's how you get higher vacancy and downward pressure on rents. And this is where the conversation needs to change because most of the commentary out there focuses on investors, people who bought condos specifically to rent. But that misses a huge group, and that group is homeowners. Vancouver is unique in one major way. Mortgage helpers are built into the housing system. In single-family homes nowadays, basement suites are not rare, they're expected. Laneway homes are not luxury, they're normal. Many duplexes now have suites. Many houses in a ton of areas have multiple rental units. And a lot of families rely on that income. Not as bonus money, but they need the money to cover the mortgage. And this is where people outside of BC get confused. Someone from Winnipeg or Calgary walks through a Vancouver house and asks, why is there always a tenant? And the reason that is because that's how affordability was engineered here. And when that system gets stressed, the impact is wide. Higher vacancy doesn't just mean maybe you just wait a little bit longer. It means longer downtime, more negotiation, lower effective rents, and higher stress on monthly cash flow. So if your suite used to rent out in 3 days before, it might take 6 weeks now, which is real money out of pocket. If you used to raise rent every year and now you're holding flat or offering incentives, that's a real shift. Before, a lot of landlords were increasing rent every year. Now a lot of people are holding flat or they're giving more incentives. And if your mortgage just renewed at a higher rate while your rental income is flat or down, that squeeze is real. And this is how people become house poor. Not because their home lost value, but because cash flow got tighter. Now, does this mean foreclosures everywhere? Not necessarily. At the end of the day, people will do almost anything to keep their homes. They'll cut spending, they'll take on side work, they'll rent rooms, they'll delay renovations, they'll dip into savings, but stress always shows up elsewhere. Less discretionary spending, less renovation activity, less consumer confidence overall in the market, and of course there will be some situations where people will be forced to sell, and it would be purely just because the numbers stopped working. Another overlooked consequence is lending. When rental income becomes less reliable, lenders adjust. They don't eliminate rental income, but they get more conservative. There's lower assumed rents, higher vacancy buffers, stricter underwriting, and that affects buyers, which affects demand for homes with suites, which feeds back into resale dynamics, and this is how second order effects happen, not overnight, but steadily. So let's talk about who gets hit the hardest. It's not the owners who bought 20 years ago and have tiny mortgages, it's the newer owners. The shiny new houses with very large mortgages, high carrying costs, and heavy reliance on rental income. These are often the same homes you see in East Vancouver, Burnaby, and parts of Surrey. Massive builds with multiple rental units, laneway homes, and sometimes even rooms rented inside of the main house. On paper, they look wealthy, but in reality, many are running on tight margins. When vacancy rises and rents soften, those margins disappear fast. And here's the part most people aren't ready for. This is not just a Vancouver story. Vancouver moves first. Surrey and Langley usually feel it next. Tenants who used to be priced out suddenly have leverage. They shop more, they ask for better conditions, they negotiate harder, and investors who used to chase cash flow in the valley start underwriting more conservatively. So if you own a suite in Surrey, Langley, or anywhere in the Fraser Valley and think this is a Vancouver problem, you're probably just early in the cycle, not immune to it. So what does this mean going forward? It means the rental market is no longer passive. You can't just sit and wait. You have to compete, you have to position, and you have to think like a business owner, because that's what a rental is now. It's a business inside of your home. So the hard truth is a lot of homeowners don't lose money because the market crashes. They lose money because they refuse to adapt when the rules change. They price too high, they ignore tenant experience, they react too late, and then they panic. And that's when mistakes start to happen. So if you own a suite, here are the realities you need to accept. Vacancy is a real risk again. Rent growth is not guaranteed. Tenants have leverage. The competition is very real. And this is not doom and gloom. This is clarity, because markets punish complacency and reward discipline. And here's the mindset shift that matters most. Your suite is a product, not an afterthought. Not extra money, not guaranteed income. It is a product, and products need to be competitive. That means pricing realistically, presenting cleanly, responding quickly, maintaining proactively, and retaining good tenants intentionally. The homeowners who do this will be fine, and the homeowners who pretend like it's still 2019 will struggle. Now zoom out. This rental shift will quietly reshape Vancouver housing over the next few years. Not in headlines, not in panic, but in more conservative buying, more realistic expectations, more pressure on highly leveraged households, more professionalism from landlords, and this is how markets start to mature. So if you're a homeowner, don't panic, but do pay attention. If you're an investor, don't assume rent growth, but do underwrite conservatively. And if you're buying a home with a suite, don't just ask, what is it rent for? Ask, how easy is this to rent? Who is my competition? What happens if this suite sits empty? The rental market didn't collapse. It's a reset. And resets always reward the people who adapt early. So if you want a real breakdown of what's happening in your area, Vancouver, Surrey, Burnaby, Langley, etc., and how suites are actually performing on the ground, just shoot me a text at 604-288-7592. I'll give you the straight answer and not the headline version. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.